Welcome to a rainy April day here in Prague. I've been doing a lot of thinking about how graduation season is just around the corner, and so many recent college graduates are going to be entering the workforce for the first time. When I did this about 7 years ago, I had only worked 1 or 2 jobs. Now at 29, I have worked over 20 jobs, and I've learned so many things in doing so. So today I thought I'd share 20 lessons I've learned from working 20 plus jobs in my 20s. In my last semester of university studies, I took this practicum course. Each time the class met, which was twice per week, a representative from a different company would come in and present what it's like to work at their company. Afterward, they would do a Q&A session, and then they would usually make themselves available that afternoon for as many interviews as they could possibly pack in. Now, I absolutely loved this class. It was hands down my favorite class in my entire degree program. I interviewed with a wide variety of companies, and I felt like this gave me an advantage when I went on to finally choose a career path. But I also remember thinking that I felt like it was limiting that I could only choose one. At the time, I was still just 21 years old, and I'd had a couple of summer jobs at a country club restaurant. But I felt like I had so many more things to learn about the workforce, and I most definitely did. I remember having a conversation with the head professor of my program at the time and telling him that I was interested in doing a lot of different things. And he kind of just laughed at me and he said, well, you can only choose one, and whatever you choose, you'll need to stick with that first job for at least a year or you'll be blacklisted from that industry. Which really scared me at the time. This added so much unnecessary pressure to my initial job hunt, and I'm sure a lot of you are probably feeling a similar pressure now. But don't worry, there are tons of opportunities out there, and I think my long resume is perfect proof of that. So let's get into the 20 things I've learned in these 20 plus jobs. Okay, so number 1 is the disillusion of the famine mentality. This is a mentality that I grew up with. Now, I didn't grow up in an extremely small town, but I did grow up in a town that didn't have a ton of opportunities, and I think that stuck with me as I entered the workforce. I felt like I had to choose something, and if someone accepted me into their company, that this really meant a lot, like I was lucky. And I carried this mentality with me for a couple of years in my early 20s, not just with jobs, but also with relationships. I felt like if I met someone and I had a connection, I had to cling to it as hard as possible. And as many of you either know or will hopefully figure out, being clingy in a professional sense or in a personal sense is not an attractive quality. Since going on to work 20 plus jobs in my 20s, I've learned that there are so many opportunities out there, so many of which that you've probably never even thought of. And when you realize that there are so many different ways to make a living, it allows you to feel more free and not carry that burden of this famine mentality of feeling like you have to force something to work with you on a daily basis. Each time you try a new thing, it makes it that much easier to try the next new thing. The second thing I learned from these 20 plus jobs in my 20s is that it really doesn't matter what you've studied, and that almost every single job requires on-the-job training, and with that, you can learn anything. As long as you take an interest in it, I have no doubt that most of you can learn whatever you attempt to learn on the job. And if you're applying for something that you really don't have any experience in, as long as you show a genuine curiosity, and maybe that's in the form of going out and doing some self-study, or even doing some projects, taking the initiative to assign yourself a relevant project that might be similar to what you might do on a daily basis in that job, that can go a very long way in getting you in front of an interviewer and eventually getting you that job opportunity. The third thing I've learned is that money is rarely the problem. I'll give the example of when I was teaching English in rural Spain. I was living on a very minuscule stipend that was about the Spanish minimum wage, but I was living a really good life. Money was not the problem. I was able to pay my rent, I was able to go out, I was able to travel around the country. And I've found this to be true all along. When I worked as a snowboard instructor, I had months where I only made a little over $300. It sounds horrendous, right? But what I found is that you can always adapt your expenses to your income. And when you're young and you don't have many financial commitments, you can get by as long as you're earning a valuable experience. So don't worry too much about money. Okay, so sticking with this theme of compensation, the fourth thing I learned during my 20 jobs in my 20s is that in your 20s, life skills are the most valuable currency. Going back to teaching English in Spain, yeah, I wasn't making a lot of money. However, I was learning a language and practicing that language on a daily basis. Learning a second language is something that I can use throughout the rest of my life, and it's an extremely valuable skill to have. So while I may not have saved much money as an English teacher, I do have life skills that I can use to potentially monetize or just enhance my social life for years and decades to come. Number 5, pros and cons. Every job has them. As a snowboard instructor, yes, I got to spend my days on a mountain, which was awesome. However, I was usually very tired at the end of those days, and while I thought I would be able to snowboard all the time, the reality was that I was usually too tired to go out, even on my days off. When I worked in a corporate setting, yeah, it was comfortable and I had energy after work, but sitting in a cubicle all day just really didn't sit right with me. So all this to say that no job is perfect, and I think it's important to find one that really minimizes the cons, although there will probably always be some things that are less than perfect. The 7th thing I've learned is that some jobs will allow you to use your natural skills more than others, while some others may feel like a daily struggle, and that's really not okay. After my first corporate job experience, I thought that dreading every day was totally normal. But over the past decade, in these 20 plus experiences, I've learned that that's not okay. You shouldn't have to dread every day, and that there are always other opportunities that can more naturally fit your personality. As a server in a restaurant, I usually felt like I was having to put myself out there more than I naturally would. I'm a naturally introverted person, so as a teacher, to stand up and to address 25 classes per week left me totally socially drained, and it didn't allow me to enjoy my social life outside of work as much as I would have liked to. So if you feel like you're forcing it, it's probably best to find something new. Number 8, getting by versus thriving. So yeah, of course, you can show up and punch the clock and do the bare minimum, and guess what? You'll probably get by. But if you find that you're not at all engaged in your job on a daily basis and like every day feels the same, if you would categorize your Monday through Friday with monotony, then you're probably just getting by. And I think that is such a waste. Let's be honest, most of us spend 5 of our 7 days each week at work. So if you're just there to collect a paycheck, you should be doing something else. It feels a little bit lame to use the term thriving, but what I'm trying to say is that when you're in a job that's a good fit for you, you should be able to maintain some sort of curiosity about your daily tasks, and you should be trying to improve the way that you're doing those tasks. If you have no interest in improving, if you don't want to learn anything more about the industry, then you're probably just getting by, and that is a sign that you should move on to something else. Number 9, dead-end jobs versus other opportunities. So I think a lot of people like to categorize jobs as dead-end, but one of the jobs I want to bring up that a lot of people would probably think is a dead-end job is working as a bartender. I got the opportunity to work as a bartender and learn on the job at a 5-star hotel and resort. And of course, a lot of people would say no other opportunities are ever going to come out of that. However, I was able to interact with a lot of interesting people from a lot of different industries on a daily basis as they were getting slightly intoxicated, which typically made them a lot more sociable. I learned about so many new opportunities during my time as a bartender, and I've actually gone on to take advantage of several of those opportunities. On the other hand, in my early 20s, I worked as a data entry clerk, and this was in many ways a dead-end job. I was never going to go on to become a data entry guru. You certainly won't see that on my LinkedIn. And although it served its purpose at the time, I knew that it was never going anywhere. So all this to say that there are times in life when it's okay to have a job, just to have a job for a short period of time. And not every job needs to be a stepping stone down a certain path toward a career. All right, the 10th thing I've learned is empathy and the ability to relate to such a large portion of the international population. I've worked in education. I've worked in the service industry. I've worked in the insurance industry and the finance industry, amongst several others. Because of my wide variety of work experience, I am now a super easygoing customer in almost every sense. I will never ask for extra sauce at a restaurant because I know how stressful that job can be. And I think learning to see things from other people's perspective is a super valuable skill for people to learn, especially when they're in their 20s. Although I think a lot of older generations could benefit from that as well. Sticking to that same theme, the 11th thing I've learned through my 20 plus jobs in my 20s is that despite today's societal polarization, so many of us are so similar in our daily lives. I've worked on 3 different continents in 7+ countries in a variety of industries. And what I've learned from this is that in our daily lives, so many of our concerns, our struggles, and the things that we enjoy are very, very similar, if not exactly the same. So in working 20 plus jobs, I've gained this sense of humanity, and I truly believe that although you might see polarization in the media, it is not nearly as true as it's portrayed. Number 12, passion versus profession. So I've had several opportunities to earn money for the things that I'm truly interested in, the things that I'm passionate about. A few of those jobs were working as a photographer, working as a freelance videographer, and working as a travel writer. And these were all great experiences. I truly did enjoy each one of them for different reasons. However, I have to say that when you choose to monetize your passion, you do have to forego a bit of creative freedom. And I think for some people, that's not okay. I certainly struggled with it myself. So one of the things I've learned in these 20 plus jobs in my 20s is that you don't have to monetize your passion. You can find a job that allows you to pursue your passion on the side and doesn't take away that creative energy. Sometimes that's a better fit. The 13th thing I've learned is that sacrificing your physical and or mental health is never okay. I know a lot of high-risk jobs offer very high salaries, but I don't see a situation where those are worth it. I've been very fortunate to not have to put myself in any sort of truly dangerous situations to earn a buck. And I know in large parts of the world, that's not the case. So I truly empathize with those people out there. And I know that there are certainly cases where people feel like they have to sacrifice their physical health or their mental health to get by. And that really sucks. But if you're in your 20s and you have the option to forgo that, even if it means making significantly less money, always choose health. There is no more valuable resource. The 15th thing I've learned is that you won't know until you try. You can watch all the vlogs you want, you can watch my YouTube videos, or you can even read a book about these things you're interested in, which I think is the best way to truly get a sense of what it's like to do them. But at the end of the day, the only way to truly know is to try it yourself. Now, as I talked about at the beginning of this list, it can be intimidating to try new things, and it's often discouraged by people who are more traditional, that say, oh, you can't try too many things, you'll be perceived as flaky. But if you're truly curious about them, you can always frame that in a positive way. So pursue your curiosities. Now in your 20s is the time to do so, when you have the least financial commitments and the least responsibilities. There will likely never be another period of your life when you can go out and try things with such ease. So go for it. Venga, número 16. If you highlight the skills you've learned, and you learn to individually craft your resume for each opportunity you're applying to, you won't be perceived as flaky. At least that has been my experience so far. My professor warned me against trying too many different jobs in my 20s. He told me that if I quit my first job within that first year, it would make it very difficult to ever get another job. and I think his vision is really outdated. Now look, if I'd hopped around from job to job and simply said that I hated each one and I was always unsatisfied, yeah, that would sound really negative and it would make it difficult for someone to take a chance to give me another opportunity. If you're in the corporate setting, most of these companies expect that you will stick with the company for at least a year, because oftentimes they're investing thousands of dollars into your training. However, if you show genuine curiosity and you can highlight what you've learned from each previous experience that's relevant to the job you're applying to, you shouldn't have problems getting additional opportunities, and this definitely should not discourage you from pursuing genuine curiosity. Number 17, always leave on good terms. Even in that first corporate job I had where I was totally miserable in my cubicle every day, I did give and completely fulfill my 2 weeks notice. I didn't want to work there a second longer, but you know what? It was a really good decision and I'm glad I did it, because that extra 2 weeks of pay went a long way. And although I never asked my former manager for a reference, you never know when you might need to do that. And you also never know when you might want to go back to that industry. So always leave on good terms. It's the right thing to do and it will benefit you in the future. Number 18, I've talked about that first job I had out of school when I worked in a corporate finance setting and it was really dull. I knew I wasn't ready for another major career type commitment immediately after that. However, I also wanted to fulfill whatever commitment I made. That's when I discovered seasonal work. And for the next couple of years, I worked on 3 to 4 month commitments seasonally. This allowed me to always fulfill my commitments while still trying a variety of different jobs in different industries. When you graduate college, it can be really difficult to find short-term opportunities, especially internships, and I think that's a massive shame. But working in the seasonal industry gives you very similar opportunities, and unlike a lot of internships, these jobs are paid. For people who are looking to try a variety of different positions, I think that seasonal work is an excellent option. And if you want to learn more about seasonal opportunities, you should check out this video I made. After several years of seasonal work and travel in between seasons, I decided to stretch what were 3 to 4 month commitments into 8 to 10 month commitments, and that's when I began my career as an English teacher. This once again allowed me to try living in different places, experiencing different cultures, and learning how to work in education. And after several years of working on 1-year contracts, I felt like I'd worked my way up into beginning a career in marketing. Okay, the 19th thing I've learned from my 20 plus jobs in my 20s is that for some people, there may not be a dream job, and that's totally okay. I talked earlier about the pros and cons and how both of these have existed in every job I've had throughout this past decade. I think a lot of people, especially young people in their 20s, put a lot of pressure on themselves to find this perfect fit, this dream job. But I think in most cases, this doesn't really exist. As I said, I've had opportunities to earn money for the things that I really enjoy doing, which are creative projects. And in several cases, I found that it's better to keep those creative projects on the side and earn a living in a different way. So the main takeaway here is don't put too much pressure on yourself to find your dream job. And as long as you continue to do things that interest you, you just might find it one day. Okay, so the 20th thing I've learned from my 20 plus jobs in my 20s is that it's so much more about the life you live outside of work than the job itself. Finding a job that allows you to live the life you want is far more important than the job you do on a daily basis. Of course, it's important to find a job that allows you to use your natural skills, and you shouldn't dread going to work each day. I talked earlier about how most of us spend Monday through Friday, 5 out of 7 days per week at work. But I actually think that's kind of a flawed way of looking at things. Most of the world works about 40 hours per week, which means that we have so much more time outside of work than we actually do at our jobs. And I think it's about maximizing this time outside of work that really leads to a rewarding life. Maybe you will find a way to monetize your passions. Maybe I'll get lucky enough to make some money off these videos one day. But for now, I'm totally happy to work in an industry that allows me to use my creativity and doesn't deplete me socially. When I was entering my 20s, I had no idea what I wanted to do for a living. And so many people discouraged me from trying too many different things and being perceived as flaky and non-committal. But I'm so glad that I've gone against the grain over this past decade and that I've had these 20 plus experiences. I've learned so much from this time, far more than I ever did in any sort of school setting. And while I do feel more settled on a career path than I have at any other point in the past decade, I'm always open to new opportunities, and I think that's a healthy way to look at life. This talking to a camera format does still feel a little bit unnatural to me, and I'm a big proponent of actually interacting with people. So with that being said, I hope that you guys will leave comments, interact, let's form a community here. Please do subscribe because each subscription allows me to make more videos like this. And thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one soon. So I'm finally getting around to editing this video, and it just occurred to me that I actually only provided 18 of 20 promised tips. So here are 2 more. The first one is that honesty is key. When you're applying for a job and going through the job hunting process, it can feel like you have to impress everyone and you have to be someone that you're not. And if you feel like you're doing this, then you're only setting yourself up for failure, even if you do succeed in getting one of these jobs. I think it's really important to be honest with yourself and with the people that you are interviewing with throughout the process. When you do this, you're setting yourself up to be in a genuine situation, a genuinely good fit. And the last thing I've learned from my 20 jobs in my 20s is that you shouldn't be afraid to negotiate. So often I've been in a position where I get a job offer that I'm really excited about, and I'm flattered, and I feel like I have to accept it because I'm afraid to lose the offer. But I think this is a mistake. As I've learned through having so many different jobs, you shouldn't be afraid to negotiate and really set the boundaries. Get what you want in those initial stages of the negotiation, because once you start working in a job, once you get a contract or become a full-time employee, it's very difficult to make changes then. So it's in these initial stages, when you've first been offered a job, that you shouldn't be afraid to express what you want. Now, this might be higher pay, this might be some remote work, things like that. Don't be afraid to speak up. I know you feel like you might lose this opportunity, but trust me, if they've gone as far as to make you a job offer, they don't want to lose you any more than you want to lose the job. Now, that, my friends, is officially 20 things that I have learned from my 20 plus jobs in my 20s. I hope this video provided you some valuable information, and I also hope to see you in the next one soon. Cheers.